All right, welcome back into another episode of the Idea Collision. This is a little bit of a milestone. This is the 20th episode that I've done. And so I want to kind of back up a little bit and just take the time to kind of explain the idea for those who might be new to it. I'm going to do this kind of from a little bit of a different perspective. We call it the Idea Collision, and so what in the world does that phrase mean? Sounds like arguing or whatever, but in life we are constantly barraged by information from all sources and all sorts of types of information. Useless information, which I always joke that I am the encyclopedia of useless information, but we put this information in our brain as we see fit. It's just like, put this here, I hear this, I put it here, and I might access it later if my brain decides where to put it, and if it feels like it's going to be something that's important that I'm going to want to, pull out. Sometimes it's just like, I'm probably never going to hear this again or need it again. Kind of like every kid who has ever said, I'm never going to need, algebra 2, or I'm never going to need, grammar in the rest of my life, whatever the favorite subject is, But we're assimilating this information to be used later. And I don't know, I don't think I've ever done this recently, but I remember in the days of ancient computers that we would defrag our computer. It wouldn't be working good, so we would defragment it. And I'm sure it still works a lot the same. I just don't know if our computers are weak enough to need doing this, but we would run a defrag kind of cleanup. And what that did is it took your information and it would actually read where your files were located for information for your programs, just regular information that you're storing. And you would notice that it was like all over. It would give you a map of your hard drive, and you like one program would have files in it here, but like another file it needed to access would be over here. And so over time you're sliding in, and your computer's trying to store up a new thing, and you're trying to figure out where it can put it. And so your computer would not be as useful as it could be. For one, it would be slower because you're trying to access one program from multiple places. But it would also, as you just kind of randomly put those in, there would be like, well, this space is too small for this program, so I'm going to have to find a space over here. And so you would actually have a hard drive that was smaller in terms of its practical use than it really should have been. So every once in a while you'd run a defrag, it would compile it, and now you have this big open space to mess up again. It's kind of like when you clean out a room in your house and you decide, oh, now look at all this room, I have to throw a bunch of junk in it. And that's your computer. It's also your brain. Over time, we just randomly store all of this information, and we like this idea, so I give it a home, and it's in there, and or maybe I just discard it, whatever. But a lot of this information gets stored, and so sometimes, because these are in so different locations, I might actually have conflicting information in my brain. I don't know how it works with a computer, but in my brain, I actually have conflicting information in my brain. And so sometimes we need to defrag. I might not have had the second idea in mind when I stored the first, or vice versa, So I have these two pieces of information. I'll give you an example of this, because we can do this intellectually, we can do this politically, we can do this spiritually, but I want to take a look at an illustration that's silly. I do our menu for the week, and that's a long story which you're not interested in. But I write up our menu and write the items that we have to get for it, and so then I do the online shopping and go pick it up. That's something that has evolved into that, but it goes back to when we lived in Ukraine. Well, my wife has things she likes. She lived in Taiwan, and she likes a lot of like Asian dishes, which I like Chinese food. I like American Chinese food. She likes curry, and she always complains that curry doesn't get on the menu enough. And so if I put it on the menu, I try to put it on when there's going to be like a night when I'm not here. I'm like, oh, I've gotta go do something tonight. I'm at a meeting. I'm at a whatever. You guys can have curry, and then everybody's happy. She gets her curry, but she's like, you never have it. So she complained, well, I don't have a night right now where I'm gonna be gone. So I said, well, all right, I'll put a curry on for her, and I'll just have to suffer through it. All right, so here's the strange thing. I like curry. Now my brain tells her that I don't like my brain has this I access when I'm accessing making menu, my brain has this mental picture of curry that I don't like it. We've been to friends' house who have served it. We've made it. My wife I've had curry. I like curry. I don't like a lot of curry, but it's just something I've stored a piece of information, and I have two pieces of information. One is my taste buds, which actually say, hey, I actually do like this stuff. But my brain up here somewhere, there's some file that says, you don't like curry, don't put it in the menu. It's conflicting. There's these two ideas that are conflicting. In fact, I've never had a curry that I don't like, I don't think, in terms of taste. Sometimes it doesn't look appealing. Maybe that's it. But we've been talking about contradictions for a little bit, and specifically with the younger generations. And again, not that that the older generations don't have any generations, or any contradictions, but the older generations are the ones that are not changing. The older we get, the less we change. We're just and if we do change, the smaller the changes are. So a change when you're older is harder, but it will also be a smaller type of a change. We'll be like, okay, I'm not like probably at 80 years old. I'm not making big moves across the country. It's like, okay, I'm gonna move. Okay, we're gonna move from this house into this, elderly residential area up the street. That's a big move for an old person. Whereas when we're young, it's like, oh, hey, honey, you want to go live in Ukraine? Those are things we do when we're young. So you don't see 80-year-old people doing that. You'll see 20, 30-year-old people doing this. So that's why we're focusing on the younger generations, because they do change, and we're trying to hopefully share some ideas for people to make significant spiritual changes. We talked about with them. We've talked about their activism, and we talked about their awareness and importance. We referenced their mental health and things, and we talked about how they've maybe been very interested in some of the awareness-based things, and yet sometimes their involvement doesn't match. There's a contradiction. Want to go back to the idea of the activism a little bit more, from a different perspective. Why don't they appear to be involved? And I say that because I'm using what we've talked about, their lack of volunteerism. They talk about volunteerism a lot, but right now it's actually very difficult to get people in these age brackets to volunteer, Gen Z and millennials. So basically 40 and under. Well, it's actually, they are active, but we have to look at how they're active, and it doesn't look like what I would like it to look like. And so today I want to talk about diversion a little bit. They've diverted their activity. They're active, but they've diverted it. They've been kind of taken aside to things that I believe are less valuable. They look valuable, but right now, and we've talked about this with the younger ones and the impact this has on the very younger ones, specifically Gen Z, and why mental health is kind of an issue. We've talked about social media, and we've talked about politics, and really these are connected. Politics, the pressure to be politically active is, I think, more than it has ever been. And, these things feel successful to people. Like it, I don't know why politics is so alluring. And it's not alluring to everybody, but it's definitely right now the most emphasized method or type of involvement that you can have is you've got to have a political opinion on anything and everything. And you really, and you not just have an opinion internally, but you have to express it. They want everybody to express it, and there is there's an approved list of political opinions that you can have and can't have. So if you have and express a political opinion that's not popular with certain groups, well, that's also wrong. So I don't even know if there's a second place of types of involvement that is, that's worthy to mention in specific, a category. It's political or nothing. Now, I grew up in the 80s in the Northeast, so wherever you grew up, you can kind of put in the names and see if this is true for you. But in the 80s and into the 90s, I didn't know the political opinions of Larry Bird or Don Mattingly, right? Fill in the names in your part of the country that, if you're in the Midwest, you did not know the political opinions of, I live in Wisconsin now. You did not know the political opinions of Paul Molitor, or if you lived in whatever, in 1990, did you know what Troy Aikman felt? I mean, you do now, but you didn't then. There was no broadcasting of political opinions. For athletes knew sports, and that's what they were interested in. I'm not saying they can't have them. I'm just saying it wasn't important for everybody to hear what everybody thought about every political thing. I'm sure they had political opinions, but there wasn't the need to focus on them and share them and emphasize them. And I don't begrudge anybody from having a political opinion. I don't care what your job is. But I'm just saying it's very emphasized right now. And, to be honest, I couldn't even tell you really what my teachers thought about political things. Like I'm trying to think of teachers when the first time I knew what some of my teachers felt about certain things. You could kind of tell, but not politics. I never heard a single teacher, support a political idea. Right now, with my oldest son, he was in public school for a little while, and primarily because his math skills were good, and we had been homeschooling at the time, and I couldn't keep up with his math, and I like math. So we put him in public school where you could have an engineering school available to him. And I was in there every day, not really, but I was in there routinely with other classes, not his math classes, but some of his other, just general classes, whether it was history or English or whatever. And I was like, he's bringing home homework assignments. And I'm like, what are we doing? This was people giving their opinions in the form of homework. And trying to instill political values. That never happened with me. And I graduated in 1990. That never happened once with me. I'm sure my teachers had political opinions. It just wasn't important to share them. But it's important for everybody to know everything. We as I say, we homeschool, and after that child, we just decided, no, we're not doing it. If they want to be exceptional, they can be exceptional in college. When they're old enough. And our kids don't even like to talk. The younger three don't even like to talk about it, and which is interesting because now I get to we had them in a private school for 3 years, a Christian school, and then we pulled them out of that just financially, and now we actually use the same curriculum as the private school did, but we just do it through homeschool. And there's these assignments, and some of them are optional, and some of them are not. At first, we didn't know how many were actually optional. And they have to write all these current event reports. Well, you type in current events, and it's all politics. A current event is politics. You want to know what people think about Russia. You want to know what people think about the election. You want to know what people think about this law or the Supreme Court. Or it's all politics. And even from a Christian perspective, there was kind of an idea like here's the world, and the world has this political view that we disagree with. We're going to try to put our finger on the scale on this side and have a lot of emphasis on politics from a Christian perspective. We're going to have the Christian politics and the Christian activism. The problem is that it's still emphasizing the politics instead of the spirituality. And it's like, we're done with it. Unless there's a current event that, maybe the World Cup. Okay, the World Cup's going on. That's not political. But there are very few of those events. So my kid he's 14. He just wants to be a kid. I kind of remember that. That's the way I was. I didn't, and I wasn't even bombarded by politics, but I certainly wasn't. I think the first time I was really politically aware was in 11th grade. And he doesn't want to think about what political views. The topic comes up because we're so surrounded by it. And my wife and I have political views, and so it does come up. But as soon as it does, he gets really, like, you can see the frustration. It's like this angst builds up. It's like, oh, let's can it for now. So in school we don't do current event reports because it's all politics. Now I want to talk about why this is alluring. Why do we get diverted into politics specifically? And there's three reasons. And I don't, again, so it doesn't make a difference what side. I'm not talking about what political view you have that is right or wrong. That Christians and non-Christians, whatever, get diverted into politics. And I want to talk about why this is alluring. What is the appeal? Because politics never made you happier. I'm telling you, you've never been happier after a political discussion. Never. You've never had a discussion with a friend, especially if he has you can have the same exact viewpoint as somebody else, and everything you say agrees with each other. You'll still come away from the conversation disgruntled because all you'll be doing with him is commiserating about the other side. So these are the three diversions of politics. Politics, first of all, feels influential. It's associated with law. Law is the structure of our country. It's important. And so law involves positions of power, and that power is influential. There's no question that's true. It feels very influential. And in the terms of me connecting myself to it. If it's important and powerful, then me connecting myself to it feels important and powerful. I'm connected with influence, right? And this addresses two needs that I have as a human being. First of all, I want to feel significant, personally significant in the world. That is called my need for a purpose. God made me with a need to fill a purpose. And so connecting something to something influential feels like it fills a purpose. The other thing I want to do is I have this intrinsic need to be in control. Not even in a bad sense. I mean, it can be bad, but we want to feel like we're in control of our world, or like things aren't like spinning wildly, chaotically out of control. And that's good. That's healthy to have kind of your hands around your world. Now, you can't always do that, but when you're connected with things that are influential, I mean, what better source of control is there? And to say that I'm helping whatever way I'm doing it to shape things that are important from the highest observable levels, the political levels in law, why that feels like I'm doing something and controlling something. So that is the first diversion. The second diversion is that it is visible. I mean, spiritual things are internal. They are, I think, more important, but they're internal, and it's very hard to see. It's hard to quantify the effectiveness of spiritual things, right? Or personal things. But think about this in a church sense. Let's not talk about politics for a moment, because the same thing is observable. Most churches, and not ours anymore, since I've been here, we've gotten rid of it, but most churches have a wooden board up front somewhere, some kind of a placard. And there are two numbers typically, at the very least, on this board. They're always there. And you know what numbers they are. They're the numbers. The first number is how many people came on Sunday. And the second one is how much money did those people give last Sunday. And that's very important for us to have those two numbers. Numbers are quantifiable. It gives us like this feeling that we can quantify the spiritual health of our church, which we can't. How many people walked in the door tells me nothing about them as individuals. How much they gave, you can say, well, see, they're into it, they're active, whatever. We already talked about them, about the need for people to, and the tendency for people to kind of replace real contribution with financial contribution. So financial contribution does not tell you that they are personally engaged in spiritual things. It tells you that they're giving a check. That's all it tells you. And it tells you that they came. It doesn't tell you what they're doing when they're not there. It doesn't tell you anything. So I can't quantify spirituality, but I want to. As a preacher, I want to be able to quantify that. And unfortunately, quantifying that, even for a good purpose, to say, I want to stay aware of this spiritual situation, that takes time. That takes investment and things like that. But this feels good. It's a diversion because I can grasp it. I can grasp those numbers. And so in a political sense, when we get back to the political idea here, this person got elected. That's quantifiable. That law got passed. My side is winning. Or on the other side, oh no, my got lost. I need to do more. This bad law got passed. I need to do more. I need to tweet more. I need to put more things on Facebook. I need to call my congressman. I need to do whatever. I need to do something that feels like I'm controlling the situation. And so it's visible in some way. It's tangible to me. The third diversion that we're going to talk about is the feeling of its substance. It's kind of like influence, but it's a little bit different. I think this is actually the most important of the three. I want you to think about the timing of the politicization of our population. Think about, okay, I said you go back a couple of decades, and we had there's this political thing. Hey, there's this important law. Okay. You would hear it from time to time. There's an election. Every 4 years, you would hear it. Now it's constant. Like the election's over, and it's already, boom, ads and whatever for the next one. There's no downtime. So this has increased. Well, when has it increased? It's increased since spirituality has declined. There's like a vacuum of spirituality, an increasing vacuum of spirituality. I'm not saying there's no spiritual people, but as politics has become more important, you can see it's because of the decline of spirituality. I'm not just talking again about people who aren't going to church. That's an element of it in our society. But even with those who are going to church, quote unquote, there's a lower spirituality. There's like this disconnect between what we do on Sunday, or how occasionally Sunday, and what I do. It's like, okay, we left church. We're going to do what we want. Okay, like I'm gonna go home from church and I'm going to spend 8,000 hours on video games and TV and computer, and I'm going to take in massive loads of probably horrible entertainment, and the spiritual level, even of people who claim to be Christians, is lower. And so as this has happened, politics is increasing. And I think they're connected. I think that law feels like it has value. Politics feels like it has value. Law is policy. Well, policy is based around right and wrong. So it fills that need for a moral thing that's being accomplished. We have that intrinsic need for a moral thing that's being accomplished. And if I'm lacking in it in my personal life, and if I'm whether totally because I'm not a Christian or religious in any way, or even I'm a person who goes to church, but my life doesn't have virtue in it on an individual level, right? I need something to fill that intrinsic need that I have. So I'm going to do it with looking for things of substance. And law and politics is a nice way to do that because of the two reasons we said. It's visible and it feels influential, but it also feels substantial. It's something connected to a moral code, and that fills that need. It doesn't fill it sufficiently, but it does fill it a little bit. Maybe like an inoculation, not really filling the deep need, but just enough. So it's not just that it fills this need, but it's also, think about the large scale of it. I kind of mentioned this a little bit. I'm doing something on a national level, right? Most people, if they're going to get politically active, they're not really interested in the local mayor's race or the dog catcher's race, as they always say. They're interested in the big stuff, the senators and even down to the reps maybe, but I'm interested in a judge. I'm interested in I'm interested in these things. And of course the president. This is the politics or big laws that I want to get passed. These are the big things that affect the country. And so I feel like I'm doing something that's affecting 400 and some odd million people. Well, that makes me, wow, that's big. It's big and it's moral, and it's filling that need of importance and substance. But here's the thing about it. Here's why it's a diversion. You will never make one deep, lasting relationship through political action. You won't. I'm not saying you won't ever accomplish anything. I'm just saying this is not where the most substance in your life will ever be. You will make a lot of noise. You will likely make a lot of enemies. You will alienate a lot of people. You will turn off a lot of people. You will not make lasting, deep friendships through political connections. It won't happen. It's a diversion. It's one I think that Satan would like us to do. I think he loves Christians to be politically active, or anybody, but especially Christians, because it takes us away from what we want to do. You will, if you want lasting influence, begin by directing. You got to give up some of those ideals that feel so important to you, but direct your efforts towards eternal spiritual things that you can't quantify. And that's where you're going to see influence over time. That's the other thing. It's I suppose is another diversion is it feels immediate. It's like our cycles are short, but things that take time, things that are internal, a personal development of somebody that you're involved with over time. And you go, wow, you look back and you say, man, remember when we were here? Remember when we were, this was our spiritual state. Find ways to be personally involved with people. And that's where, so we get to volunteering, whether it's volunteering for an organization or doing things even more importantly that are directly spiritually connected. Personal involvement. And as you really get involved, you will notice that you don't have time for the politics. I really don't have time for all the political nonsense. I keep an eye on it just because I'm connected to things that I have to be politically connected with in terms of people that we help in Ukraine. So there's some little politics. So I'm aware of some of it, but I try not to be. I've got too much stuff to do because I'm trying to be active in people's lives and trying to do things that are accomplishing eternal things. And so whatever the diversion is, analyze the diversion. Start this weekend and pick off something that is like this motive that you have that this appeals to, because I know, especially the younger you are, the more this is true, that you're probably politically active, and you have this need. Think about what it is that is missing and what you can do to fill that need the right way. We're 20 in, so click on some of the links that we have, and share it with people. We have different ways to listen to the podcast if you want, and continue on with us for the next 20. All right, have a good week.